Welcome to A Better HR Business, the podcast that looks at how HR consultants and HR tech firms grow their businesses and how they help their employers to get the best out of their people. Remember, for show notes and downloads, go to www.getmorehrclients.com/podcast. That's getmorehrclients.com/podcast. Okay, let's get started.
Hello, welcome to the show. Great to have you along today. And I'm really looking forward to today's conversation where I'm meeting a fascinating CEO and founder who's dealing with a really tricky area. So as we know, women face huge imbalances in the world in all areas, and it's no different in the workplace. There's gender gap, which continues, and whilst women make up half the population, they certainly don't get half of the leadership roles and so on. So joining me today is a fascinating woman who's doing something about it, and in a very clever way. She's created a world-leading AI platform built by women for women. So Shubhi Rao is the founder and CEO of Uplevyl, which is an AI platform which harnesses the power of women's wisdom, data, and insights to train the next generation of women leaders. So as I said, fascinating area. But firstly, Shubhi, thank you very much for joining me today.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, great to have you. And wow, such an exciting area. But before I do that, you are CEO and founder. I know you've got a team and a company behind you, but you left some pretty heavy places, former VP, Treasurer and Officer roles at Alphabet, Google, Tesco, PwC, Ford, those sort of things. What made you leave those to create Uplevyl?
There wasn't any one single moment in life that I went, oh, this is it. I'm going to quit and go do this. But it's just experiences, observations, learnings along the way. If you take a step back and think about what's happened in leadership, whether that's leadership in corporates, leadership in government, right, leadership across, we've made progress as women for sure, but it's also been stubbornly stuck, let's say in corporate America, at 30%. And you wonder why. And so, I am somebody who's very analytical, very data-driven, and there are so many studies that show that we probably spend close to $25 billion just purely in leadership development. We also know that the data says that about 70% of our senior leaders are men and 30% are women across the board, even in sectors where it's women dominated. Look at healthcare, 70% of the workforce is women. When you look at senior leadership, it doesn't reflect that, right? And so when you look at the $25 billion that we spend purely on leadership, where does that go? Well, 75% of that $25 billion gets spent on senior leadership. But we also know that 70% of the senior leadership is men. So we're reinforcing something that's been pretty well reinforced, which means there's not a lot left for our early stage to mid-stage women, right? And so when you sort of do the math, you get to around $3.5 billion is what we spend across millions and millions and millions of women just in the US alone, right? So then you say, okay, well, what do we offer for the $3.5 billion? What can we offer? Well, what do we offer? We offer ERG groups, and we offer, one size fits all online training, some mentoring, but we cannot really deliver what we do on the senior leadership side, because you go, well, why do we spend almost $18 billion on senior leadership, considering it's such a small population relative to our early to mid stage? Well, when we unpack that, what we notice is that we provide highly personalized resources, coaching, retreats, very curated webinars or in-person events, right? But these are really high-touch products that cost money. So for me, as I was working on some really interesting finance-oriented applications at Google using lots of big data, that's when I started to think about how could we use data in a really smart way to provide highly personalized resources to women, where we could give that real quality in terms of content, and we could also provide connectivity and so that they could really connect with each other, get the peer learning, get mentoring, but also very data driven. So organizations can actually get data insights that will allow them to figure out where best to invest. So that was the sort of the kernel of a thought I had while I was working on this project. And then slowly that little noise in my head started getting louder and louder, to the point where I started to journal. And then brought a small team together to just build a small alpha. And so, it took a few years for it to go from a little kernel in my head to where we are today. But it really started to figure out, I'm not going to die on that hill of trying to shift those dollars between early to mid stage. That's not what I want to do with the 10,000 days remaining in my life. But what I was going to do and what we are doing together with a wonderful team is building technology that will use data, gender data, in a really smart way to provide highly personalized tools to our women, whether they are in corporates or they are in different organizations or, working for the government across various sectors across the globe. Also, from the organization perspective, provide tools that are highly integrated so they don't have point solutions. And thirdly, of course, we're a data company. We start with data, we end with data, but really providing rich data insights both to the users, but also to the organization. And most importantly, of course, when we realize that, we're talking about $3.5 billion, and hopefully that continues to grow and expand, is being able to do it at a democratized cost. So that's what Uplevyl is all about.
Great. Yeah. So let's face it, there's a fortune being spent on leadership development, but it's concentrated in a certain pocket, and other areas are not necessarily getting the same amounts of funding allocated to that sort of training. And then what is offered to those other sections of the workforce maybe doesn't produce the best results. And so Uplevyl's providing something, but it's specific for women. So I'm curious, what exactly do companies get, or how do they use Uplevyl? What does Uplevyl do for them?
Yeah, again, I think taking a step back, when you look at the world and over centuries, and there's nothing right or wrong about it. It is what it is, where we are today, which is it's a huge male construct. And then, of course, women entered the workforce, and we've been trying to adjust and adapt and keep chipping away at it to get a seat at the table. But of course, after all these centuries or decades, we're still not quite there. And part of it is male biases exist, just like female biases exist, right? I mean, the biases exist. But when you start to retrofit products that were probably designed for men, for women, they don't maybe necessarily always work. And so we need a balance. And especially when we think about technology, so much of technology is built by men, and also man equals human is a default across development of so many products. So what we would like to do, and this is what we offer corporates, is truly a gender-based product where the data sets are all developed by women for women, really all their experiences and the challenges that they've had across their professional life, the personal life, and the financial life. Because as an employer, it's really hard to cater to all of those, but you have to look at a human holistically. They have a personal life, they have a professional life, they have a financial life. So how do you provide rich resources? And again, through the gender lens across those. So you really need that gender data. That is what we do provide to our members on the corporate hub. But also, it's important that when we think about leadership, there's what's important, and there's this whole literature out there about, the 33%, the missing 33%. And there's a perception that women are missing financial acumen or strategic acumen or business acumen, or sometimes we have it, but we're not demonstrating it, or we don't have the confidence. So that's the other vector on the platform, that we really make sure that there's a lot of information and content so that we have a generative AI tool that not only just provides all those rich resources through the gender lens to tackle our professional, our personal, financial challenges, goals, and aspirations, but also there's a focus on those assessments. And when I say assessments, in the modern day assessments through our generative AI tool, but also then be able to provide micro learnings, explicit micro learnings, or through Uplevyl Genie, again, which is our generative AI tool, to have personalized learning pathways, right? So what organizations get there is really a different way of up-leveling women through that gender lens. But that's one side of the equation. The other side of the equation, of course, is you need to build a connective tissue. So many of the organizations, people are all over today. Of course, even if they're in one building, maybe, but frankly, we live in a world of hybrid and remote working. So building that connective tissue is more important than ever. So how do you do that? And it can't just be, like LinkedIn just connect people. It needs to be more organic. It needs to be more than one way. And we're obsessed with personalization. So we kind of expect people to all connect in the same way. So that means, we want women to connect around virtual events. We want women to connect where they're trying to find their peers or find mentors. We want women to connect around discussion forums or common interests they may have. So you got to figure out really good organic way. Now, granted, it's on a digital platform, but you got to sort of bring that human thinking and human design into figuring out how to really create that rich environment for women to feel like they belong, which is really important. And then lastly is, of course, providing data, right? So being able to give the corporates data on engagement, data on activity, data on sentiment. I think that's important, not only an ROI perspective, but also how they can be proactive and where they can invest ahead of time. So that's a quick summary of what we offer corporates on their IntelliHub.
I love it. Yes, I saw the term IntelliHub, and I'll come back to the AI and the data in a second. So the terminology IntelliHub, so a company that says we've got a population of women and we want to help them either develop in their careers, I guess, perform better and feel more confident in their roles and get the support that they need, and also progress into leadership roles, as we don't have enough women in leadership roles inside the company. So they would come onto the portal into what's known as an IntelliHub. And in there, you mentioned a variety of things, which I think sounds amazing. So bite-sized learning, personalized through AI. So it's not just you open up a cupboard full of training in there, but it's personalized to the person, hence the word. And then that is all based on women, data insights, etc. And then you mentioned collective tissue. So I'm guessing that there's opportunities to collaborate, discuss either the learnings that are in there or company issues that they're discussing. Is that a fair summary?
Yep, that's perfect. Yes. And by the way, one point I missed out is that it's not just let's just go collect data and then that's what powers the algorithms, right? It is about really bringing in experts. So we have Uplevyl Studios, and Uplevyl Studios works with contributing editors to help bring women experts. So these women experts could come from the world of academia, from the world of medicine. They're corporate leaders, they are coaches, they're domain experts in whatever topic it is. So that's one element. But the other is also we are diverse, right, in many ways. And so the platform's diversity has to reflect the diversity of the members it's going to serve. And so roughly over 60% of our content comes from very diverse women, right? So that's the other thing, is also thinking through that lens. So it's not just a gender lens, but truly diversity in thinking and diversity in backgrounds and diversity across the different factors is also really important in how we build this.
Yeah. And I do want to highlight something you mentioned earlier about products being developed typically by men. So I've heard the handrails are too high on trains and phones are built for male hands. That's the product side. But technology, I remember the one I think I've mentioned on this show a few times, but I think it was Amazon, where they had an algorithm to sift through CVs that were coming through. And so they rejected one candidate and then they rejected a second. And so the AI algorithm went, well, from now on, we're going to reject candidates who happen to come from the same college. Well, that college was a women-only college. And so therefore, anyone who was applying from there, and then it learns, all right, we're not accepting anyone from there, so we're going to reject all females. It just got worse and worse snowball. So that's an example of technology. So not just products, but technology designed by men, and it kind of has an impact where it's for men because it's only men who are benefiting from that situation. So then I guess that turns to Uplevyl, which is AI by women for women, whereby can you tell me about that? So the data and inputs and how it's only from women, because I find that's fascinating, because for me, I've never heard of that before in the world. So
I think as we continue to make progress in this whole world of AI, machine learning, et cetera, and as corporates start to adopt it for whatever application, what's going to really become very important is going to be trust or responsible AI. Now, granted, our application is for women because that's where the inequity lies. But when you think about building high quality technology alongside with high quality data, you cannot just go scrape the internet, because if you do that, what comes with it is all the biases that are in there. And also there's no curation happening up front to figure out, even if that is really good data or if it's fake news, right? So there's also not just the fact that the data that we have is by women and for women, because that's of course really important, but there's independent of that, there is a process that we have adopted. And even for a small startup like we are, but that's a really important area of investment for us, is really curating that content. So although Uplevyl Studios produces this content, even then, we don't just push it into the system. It still goes through a whole curation process to ensure that there are no other biases and the content makes, it is truly accurate. And so when we look at our data set and what our generative AI tool does, it actually points to our data set and pulls information and data and resources from what we have built, as opposed to scraping it from the internet. And now it really falls on you, the user, to decide whether, is that really real or not, right? So you have to figure out how to best verify it.
Yeah, I think that's so important. So for the listeners, an example, I was having a play around with Uplevyl and comparing it, for instance, to ChatGPT, which I suspect if STEM statistics are what they are, then it was probably made by mostly men. But yeah, I was asking about mentoring. How do you get more women into leadership roles and stuff like that? And one of the things that came up in ChatGPT was, give women mentoring and get our leaders to mentor to bring people through. But on the Uplevyl side, it took into account the differences that women face. An example being that if you have a leadership team of 20 people, maybe 3 of them are women. And so are you expecting those 3 women to mentor all the women in the organization? In which case, that's a huge workload versus the 17 guys there who just sort of take on a couple of protégés, let's call them, and then mentor them. So there's a workload difference. And then I didn't realize the senior women in the organizations are often asked to go and do press interviews or speeches and stuff to represent the women in their organization, which is an additional workload, all that kind of stuff, which is not coming through in the technology. So I think that data and the inputs that you're bringing into Uplevyl, I can see how it fits into an organization and to the HR. In terms of the benefits for a company, I'm already seeing it. Like for me, employer branding is a huge thing, right? So to be able to say, attracting talent to the organization, what have you got for me as a high potential woman? That's a big thing. What do you see, or what are you hearing from companies as being how Uplevyl is helping them either with turnover or attraction and retention, that sort of stuff?
We live in a capital society. And when you think about what is really important to an organization is whatever product that they're building, and they are able to generate the highest revenue and the highest bottom line. And in order to support that, and, look, as a finance person, many years in finance, you will never see as much as we say, human capital is an asset. Our people are an asset. In reality, truly, again, as a finance person, it's a cost. It's a cost. And so what happens? You're only going to continue to invest as long as you can continue to get the ROI out of that, right? So as companies think about investing in their population, you can't invest the same across every person in the company by definition. And we don't come at this from necessarily, from a social justice place, that equality is the right answer. To us, we want to work with organizations to provide a solution to a business problem. And that business problem is that today the world is rapidly changing. There's a lot of transformation happening because of AI, and not just AI, but just the technological advancements, which means that our workforce needs to really get upskilled and be ready for not today, but what's coming in the next 5 years. But are our universities doing a great job? Question mark, right? Because this year we know, for example, there are a lot of young kids who have come out of school and are really struggling to find jobs. And at the same time, we're hearing layoffs happening, but those layoffs are not coming necessarily from a place of cost, but they're really coming from a place of them wanting to reconfigure their organizations. So it also means that we need to bring in talent that is ready for this new future. The other piece that's happening in the world today is that because of AI, there's a lot of literature again out there that says women will disproportionately lose their jobs. If they lose their jobs, but at the same time, there is a demand on the other side, a huge demand for a new kind of talent, we need to figure out how to get this talent, shift this talent so that they're ready for the next set of jobs coming, right? And so that's what really Uplevyl is all about. It's about providing this platform to organizations so that you can get all your women together. You can figure out, help them to, first of all, it helps on the attraction and retention because there's a great sense of belonging, there's a great sense of connectivity, but you are able to not just use the content that comes out of the box from Uplevyl, but you're also able to provide your own content, obviously curated by Uplevyl, to ensure that you're staying ahead of the curve. So it doesn't all have to be just around the personal and the financial domains, but on the professional side, if you truly want to upskill your women, here's a really great way to do it. And it's all integrated. So you're not having to go and adopt yet another point solution to upskill your women, right? So that's what we're talking about, is really using Uplevyl in a really smart, strategic way to work with your women workforce.
Got it. So it could be used by ERGs, employee resource groups that focus on women.
Yes. I just really wish that every woman belonged to an ERG group, right? So that's the challenge. And if you look at large organizations, oftentimes we have ERG groups, but they're spotty. Like, oh, our ERG group in Brazil is amazing, but then, the ERG group in another part of the world is probably not as active, or it's very fragmented. It's a very big country. We have actually a client that is in India, and their group in Pune is really strong, but the rest of the country, not so much, right? So because ERGs oftentimes are designed to be in person, right? And that's the magic of it. That's the beauty of it. But how do you create a macro ERG for a company? So we love working with the ERGs because we then become the platform to enable them to amplify their initiatives.
I know we're talking about HR stuff, but I'm guessing it could probably work for wider groups outside of the workplace that focus on women, whether that be women in tech or investment groups and things like that. I mean, it still applies,
Absolutely, right? There are so many professional groups as well. So Society of Women Engineers as an example, or women in architecture, or women in accounting, women in finance, women in marketing. Like there are so many groups out there that could absolutely use a hub to very smartly connect women. Let's say they're all spread out across the United States. This is a great way to bring all of those women together. And what does this various technological advancements mean now to our profession? How do we use it? How do you knowledge share with each other, right? It's a beautiful platform to not only just bring women together, share their challenges, share our experiences, but also how do we get ready for the next decades of our career?
Absolutely. So other than this podcast interview, what are you doing to get the word out there about Uplevyl?
Obviously we work with a lot of companies, but at the same time, for all of you who are listening, we would absolutely love for you to share it with your employers, talking to other women's groups, our website that we just redesigned. Would love your feedback on it. But we also have, it's not quite a movement, but I would say that's what we'd love. Because in the end, as we think about Uplevyl Genie is a collective brain of all of us women on this planet. So imagine if 4 billion plus women contributed the knowledge base to Genie, would it be unbelievable, right? So we would love that. And so always welcome to go onto the website and share. And when we say your wisdom, it could be anything, your wisdom across any dimension of your life, whether it's professional, it's personal, financial experiences, your learnings, right? I mean, all of that is really rich for other women to benefit and for you in turn to benefit from the others.
That's so good. Yeah. So I did see that on the site. So if you're listening to this, check out Uplevyl for the opportunity to contribute your insights. If you've got some either data or insights or things to share, you can do that, and it goes in and gets curated and added to the AI, women-generated or women-trained AI. That's fabulous.
The way I talked about it was sort of internal to Uplevyl, but on the external side, from time to time, do quite a few speeches and presentations. We also post thought leadership pieces, reports, our emails, as well as we're active on LinkedIn as a social media platform, and coming soon, Uplevyl podcast.
Oh, very exciting. The exciting world of podcasting. Yeah, well, that's a lot of stuff. So I subscribe to the email newsletter. It's a great read. And yeah, you've been busy, I have to say, Shubhi, a lot of presentations and getting the word out there. So I'm guessing that's a smart way to go. And if people want to learn more about Uplevyl, what should they do next?
Well, like I said earlier, please come visit our website. There's a lot of great information in there. We're very transparent on the product, on Uplevyl itself. It's the same you'll find on the website. We try to be as transparent so you can really learn. And by the way, we would love any feedback. So please do so. Subscribe to the newsletter. It's a great newsletter that honors and celebrates a lot of women, but it's also a place where you can learn more about women and AI and tech and what the trends are and what does this mean in the workplace and leadership. Like we said, please come in and share your wisdom and spread the word. When the podcast drops, please make sure to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on LinkedIn. And of course, connect with me on LinkedIn. Would love it. So
fabulous.
Those are all the different ways you can learn more about Uplevyl and at the same time connect with us.
Sounds really good. So yeah, if you're listening to this on the go, then we'll have all those details and links in the show notes. But just to sort of wrap it up then, for someone listening to this, we've covered a lot of ground. How would you summarize what Uplevyl does or is doing to help women inside companies in particular?
Yeah, I would say to summarize what we do specifically for the women is really provide a high quality tool that in this day and age where we are so used to everything being personalized, whether that's Spotify or it's Prime or it's Netflix, it's the same thing. So it's highly personalized content that you can get, but one that you can trust. Most importantly, we also deliver all that in a very trusted space. We do not take your data and sell it to the advertisers. We protect the data. We will never violate your privacy, right? So you're in a very safe space where you can truly share, your goals, your aspirations, so that the platform can learn and provide you the right resources. In addition, we want to make sure that you're on a platform where you truly belong and you have opportunities to connect within your organization, or you want to connect, with mentors and other experts. But there is a way to do that through whatever form works best for you, whether that's through living rooms, which is our virtual events, or really just direct connections, or through discussion forums, right? So really you go to this one place where, get your dashboard and it's all about you and where you are and where do you want to grow and where do you really want to up-level.
Yeah, I love that. And again, with my HR hat on, I just think it's got such a range of great opportunities for a company because, as I said earlier, it's great for employer branding, which makes your attraction and retention better. But on the retention side of things, it has that connective tissue, gets people able to discuss things, share challenges, learn from each other, support each other, which is only going to help people stay in your company. So on the retention side, I think that's such a huge element, and it would definitely help people progress and get new opportunities, because we do hear the stories that men will stick up their hand for a job or a job ad when they're less qualified, and the woman who's maybe more qualified won't, because she thinks, no, I've still got to bridge that gap before I can do that. So I think it's such a wonderful thing. I really thank you for building what you're building, doing what you're doing, and also for sharing some of your insights with us today. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks for joining us today on A Better HR Business, the podcast that explores the world of HR consulting and HR tech businesses. For show notes and downloads, go to www.getmorehrclients.com/podcast. That's getmorehrclients.com/podcast. Remember to subscribe and share the show with any friends who are busy growing a HR business. Thanks, and see you next time.